everyone. Very excited to be here. My name is Cristiano Rizzi from the Boston Consulting Group. More than 20 years of experience in energy. I've been working around the globe, Europe, North Africa, North America. I lived in Southeast Asia for a couple of years, and as of 2014, I moved to the Middle East. And I lead the energy practice for the Boston Consulting Group in the Middle East. And what we are witnessing here is an amazing revolution, where the Middle East players are playing quite a pivotal role. So very excited to be here, moderating this session about green hydrogen, about partnership in green hydrogen, how to make green hydrogen work. Green hydrogen is the future of energy, is the future for decarbonization, and the partnership and making sure on how to create the right ecosystem to make sure that the value chain will work is instrumental to the success of green hydrogen going forward. That is quite clear. As such, I'm very pleased with the panel that I have today, which is representing exactly the ecosystem that needs to be placed. Starting from Francois, Vice President, Middle East and Africa for EDF Renewable. Francois, can you join us on stage? Good morning, Francois. May I ask you to introduce yourself and share a few words on yourself and your company?
Good morning to everybody. My name is Francois Dao. I'm part of the EDF group. EDF is a French company. We are utilities with 130 gigawatt installed capacity and 75% of low carbon electricity generation, mainly in France and Europe, but throughout the world. EDF Renewables is 100% subsidiary of EDF. I am in charge of the Middle East and Africa region. For MENA, just to make it short, our assets now amount to 5 gigawatt, about 5,000 megawatt of solar and wind. They are in construction, in operation, let's say in Dubai, which is the phase 3 of the Dubai Solar Park, but also in construction, like in Abu Dhabi with the Al Dhafra of 2 gigawatt, which will be the largest solar plant in the world in one single project. And of course, in wind also, in Saudi Arabia with Dubai and Jandal, and in Morocco also. So we definitely are committed to the MENA region in terms of renewables. Yes, we want, and it's our purpose, is to support countries, industries to decarbonize their business, their industries, and renewable, of course, is a major element, of course, and then green hydrogen as well green ammonia are, and we'll discuss more details, will be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us, Francois. Looking forward for the discussion. May I ask next on stage Mohamed Hasan from Microsoft. Mohamed is Industry Director for Energy and Sustainability. Microsoft is both a technology player, but also very ambitious net zero target for the company. May I ask you to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here today with all of you. I'm not going to speak much about Microsoft. I guess everybody in the room knows it, and we're not just doing Windows and Excel. My role is Industry Director for Energy and Sustainability, and under the word energy comes oil and gas, power utilities, manufacturing, mining. Sustainability refers to the energy transition across these sectors, and how do we provide cloud, AI, and the technology platform and technology enabler to enable that energy transition. Definitely our commitment to sustainability is very tough. It's culture. On a corporate level, we set the goals to be, by 2025, to have all our data centers running on renewables, 24/7 on renewables. Definitely hydrogen is one piece of the puzzle to do that. By 2030, to be 100% carbon neutral offices, that includes scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. By 2050, to remove all the carbon footprint that Microsoft emitted since its founding in 1974. It's definitely a journey, strong targets, and happy to shed some lights today around the partnerships and the value chain and how we can achieve that using technology that's available today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohamed. Very happy to have you on board. May I ask William Rowe to join? William is founder and CEO, Octopus Hydrogen. Octopus is a startup. Green hydrogen is also launching new businesses to facilitate the development of the value chain. So very interesting to have you on board. If you can introduce yourself and your company.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for welcoming us as well. It's been great so far. So yeah, I'm William Rowe, CEO and founder of Octopus Hydrogen. We're a startup in the hydrogen space, so I'm delighted to be with such an esteemed company and so many companies that I guess aren't startups. What we do is we produce green hydrogen and then deliver it through to the end application. So I guess we're vertically integrated. And the reason for that really is because we wanted to help foster the demand side and make it easier for companies to adopt using green hydrogen, specifically in applications like mobility or displacing grey hydrogen, because that's especially road-based grey hydrogen for applications where you're not at the scale of the large SMR plants. That's quite a good opportunity for us both commercially and in terms of CO2 reduction. And then the other thing we really focus on is we try and use green hydrogen production to be part of a dynamically balanced electricity grid. So you could ask, why would a company like us try and come into the hydrogen market? Our strategy is not to build wind and solar assets. Our strategy is to help shape the load profile of those wind and solar assets so that we can, A, enable more to be built, so I handle the fact that those renewables are intermittent, and then provide grid balancing services through the production of green hydrogen. So we see it as a kind of a dual relationship between ensuring that there's viable offtake and producing that hydrogen cost effectively, but also dynamically so that we enable 24/7 zero carbon grids in the future.
Thank you and welcome, William. Last but not least, let me welcome Dinesh Singh, lead planning and strategy at Saudi Aramco. So we also have an oil and gas company, very ambitious target in terms of decarbonization themselves. Dinesh, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dinesh. I work with Saudi Aramco, and currently I'm sitting in Australia at my home. Unfortunately, I should be there. But of course, Saudi Aramco being one of the largest oil company in the world, and then knowing the future, the business, trends as well as the challenges in terms of decarbonizations and looking for the green energy or clean energy in the future. We are working hard in all aspects in terms of decarbonizing our assets at the same time, try to dominate the new energy market, which is, of course, we talk about clean energy market. I can say low carbon, carbon neutral market. Low carbon, it means like, with the same hydrocarbon product with the lower carbon backup on it at the same time, ultimately going for green hydrogen, a green ammonia, which is ultimate goal for every world to be carbon free. So being as a largest oil company, we're all looking in the directions as we know that where we need to go in future. At the same time, we make sure that we have a well-deserved approach to sustain our core business at the same time, meet expectation of the future industry trends and the needs of the world in terms of energy, in terms of environments. I'm working with Aramco for the last 8 years as a planning specialist and lead, currently working on one of the world's largest CCS project in the kingdom, which is, of course, to drive low carbon energy product, including the blue hydrogen and ultimately going to be green in the future. So we are doing a lot in that directions and working hard to make everything happen in the way people think the world should be tomorrow. That's all I can see there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dinesh, and welcome. So, a renewable company, a technology player, I would say traditional technology, but at the forefront of innovation, a startup, and the largest oil and gas player globally with very high ambition in terms of decarbonizing their own portfolio of assets, but also being at the forefront of blue and green hydrogen. I cannot ask for a more diverse panel to moderate, which is great, because we're going to talk today about partnership in green hydrogen. Partnership is key. More than 20 countries have announced net zero targets, and green hydrogen is part of this mix. You cannot decarbonize any country without the support of low carbon hydrogen, and specifically green hydrogen in the future. More than 900 projects have been announced at the beginning of the year. Some of those projects are in the Middle East. Middle East is blessed with low cost for green electricity, great irradiation, potentially also good wind, particularly in some part of the region. So it's a perfect place where to innovate and to launch new projects. If you go through the list of the projects, we have DEWA with Siemens. Some of you might have went yesterday and visited their operation. We have, of course, NEOM with Aqua Power and Air Products as off-taker of ammonia. We have the recent announcement of ADNOC, very ambitious plans with TAQA and with Masdar. And we have also the recent MOU signed by PIF, POSCO, and Samsung from Southeast Asia. If you go through the list, it's evident that no one can do this alone. You have to do it in partnership. You need to create the right ecosystem. Again, the Middle East is uniquely placed because of the potential low cost for electricity, because also of the proximity to the import market, be it Asia, be it Europe. But we all know that we are at the beginning of this journey, and many challenges are ahead of us, right? So let me start asking the different panelists what is their view in terms of the challenges that in the Middle East we are witnessing in terms of starting up this new industry, and what are the potential solutions or the best practices. Francois, let me maybe start from you.
Well, if we want to talk about challenges, I'm not sure the whole day will be enough. We are definitely at the start of the journey. We, as EDF Renewables is concerned, we are on the green part. Definitely our business is to invest, to develop, to build, to operate long-term renewable plants. And this is what our first challenge would be, is to start from our knowledge, our expertise, to develop or to identify projects in terms of land, in terms of grid connection, in terms of proximity to large seaport to export. These are our first challenge as green part of the green hydrogen mechanism. Then the second challenge, I would finish with 3 only. Second challenge is green hydrogen is 2 different worlds that we need to integrate. The electron, the green electron part, and then the molecules, either hydrogen or ammonia. These 2 different worlds would have been living, working independently, where now we need to mix these 2 and to build the projects not only technically feasible, but also bankable, so that it can sustain on a medium and long term. And my last challenge is the offtake side. We know that there will be a lot of end use for green hydrogen. I think all sectors, mobility, production, will need hydrogen. But it's still very uncertain how this offtake will take place, when they will take place, and how much they would need. But one thing for sure, I finish here, and I'm personally very much certain about it is that the need for green hydrogen and associated products will be huge in a very near future. That means that at least from our industry, we need to get prepared to provide answer solutions for these future needs.
Thank you, Francois. Very clear, and I pretty much share what you said. Mohamed, if I may pass on you, what is your view on the challenges?
So I'll answer from a couple different points. So the first is the region that the nature of the region we're in is highly dependent as an economy on the hydrocarbons, right? And we've seen how the price of hydrocarbons has shoot up. Working with the operators here, the investment immediately went, okay, we need to get more hydrocarbons, right? Can that affect the transition, starting hydrogen business, the energy transition? Can definitely be a factor to slow it down a little bit, although they have the ambition goals, but now the goal is to recover economically from the low hydrocarbon prices that we've seen over the last 2 years. So we are having both conversation in parallel, which is not very hard to balance. How can we achieve net zero and be sustainable? And in the same time, how can we get more oil out? The second challenge is the technology adoption. You definitely need a lot, a culture change to adopt the new technology at the right pace and the right speed to be able to get this project up and running and make it effective. If you make an investment, you need to have the technology that can prove that this investment is effective and it has an impact on your carbon footprint on an asset level through its full life cycle and on a project and country level as well. So the technology adoption comes from at least Microsoft point of view, comes the data residency, comes the use of this data, the security, and so on. So it's a culture change, and the speed of the technology adoption towards the green hydrogen in general, or the energy ecosystem in general. That's the second challenge I would like to point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed. William, I think speaking of innovation, adoption of new technology, that's your day-to-day job, right?
I'd like to think so, but so just touching on the challenge, I think for me the most obvious and probably pressing challenge is ultimately there must be a very natural propensity to want to lean towards producing grey and then blue hydrogen and exporting that, through great reserves and the ability to do so. But I suppose I would look at it the other way, which is I think the lifetime for blue hydrogen as an for applications will be limited, because ultimately, as we move towards a net zero 2050 world, capturing 60% of that CO2 probably isn't going to cut it. And especially in the markets where there is an appetite to buy the lower carbon solutions earlier, such as Germany, etc., I don't really see that being the natural thing to do. By the time you've built a large CCUS project and then you got to go in and then try to export it, etc. I think the appetite to receive imports of carbon or relatively high carbon products is going to get diminished over time. So for me, I suppose ultimately the challenge is kind of saying, do you want to back the horse that might be okay and could survive for a while, or do you want to go for the sort of the future-proof version and go big on that now? I know what I'd pick, but then I don't own a load of gas fields, so I guess I'd do the one that I have to do. But if I owned a lot of other assets like that are the guy behind me, then clearly I might have a different strategy.
Yes, and let's hear from you, Dinesh. What is your view on the challenges, and what are the best practices that you are witnessing at the moment to accelerate this ecosystem and the creation of this ecosystem around green hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen?
So I totally agree in MENA region where predominantly we are hydrocarbon based. So we look for how to sustain a core business, at the same time make sure world is not receiving a carbon loaded energy source. To be honest, of course, what is a green hydrogen? Basically the way you transport sun energy from one place to other place. That's why green hydrogen. We can always place through. We're talking about people talking about long distance wire connections like grid to transport solar energy. Solar energy means like a mix of wind and power, wind and solar with high capacity factors. One way of is converting into green ammonia because it is easy to transport. And as you know that lately a ship full of green hydrogen, say hydrogen, shipped from Australia to Japan. So this means technology has appeared where we can sustainably transport even hydrogen. Till now, the biggest challenge we had is in terms of LNG, liquefied natural gas, which is 169 or 170, minus 170 degree. Green hydrogen is beyond that, minus 200 something. So there's a further challenges, being light gas. So of course, the green hydrogen is the ultimate energy source that need to be distributed from one part of the world to the other part. And the greatest challenge, of course, is the cost, because we got solar energy cheap, wind energy cheap, but again, to transport this energy, we need to have some form of medium. At this stage, medium is either ammonia or finally coming to hydrogen. To get that hydrogen, we have to go through electrolyzer. And electrolyzer capacity, the utilization as well as, you can see efficiency is very low. That basically kills most of the energy produced through the solar or wind. So, of course, technology is very important. The two aspects, of course, increase the electrolyzer capacity efficiencies, utilization of electrolyzers, and second, how to store hydrogen. Hydrogen storage is not cheap, it's an expensive process. Going for high pressures, going for a liquefied way, going for some other way around where we can combine with something like ammonia talking about at this stage. Or it could be better in the future, because the problem with ammonia, it transported to the point A to point B, it again needs to be converted into hydrogen. So there's again energy loss. And so the biggest challenge at this stage is the cost. We need to compete the cost. We have the solar energy, as you know, this low quality energy, which need to be excavated, to be collected together to have a high efficiency, a high grade energy to convert into power, and then convert into transportable way, which is a green hydrogen. So of course, for me at this stage, I see the technology. If I break through have a electrolyzer technology, high efficiencies, and cheaper way of storing and transporting hydrogen, I think then we are there. We are almost close, especially for those areas like NEOM, where there is a high efficiency of solar and wind together, where wind picks up in the night when solar goes down, and that basically gives high capacity factor of the whole renewables. So I think we are very close in the cusp of making a real deal in the future. By 2035, you can see a huge change even before that. I'm very optimistic, and I believe a lot of effort is going on in these directions. And hopefully we'll have very good news soon. In fact, like even every company is going towards there. In fact, most of the CCS project in future is coming to be carbon neutral. Like CCS project need a lot of energy, and that energy comes from renewables. So things are changing, platforms are changing, the direction is changing, and the strategy is changing. And everybody wants to be carbon neutral, one way or other. That's what I can say at this stage.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you. You mentioned something very, very relevant, and I agree with you that cost will be important, right? Being cost efficient will be key. MENA is well positioned because of very good irradiation and to some extent wind in some part of the GCC. It's not the only place, right? It's in competition with Chile, it's competition with Australia, to mention a few. May I ask, maybe starting from Francois, and in the end, the MENA region can play a role, but will have to export, right? Either toward Asia or toward Europe. Is the ecosystem ready for larger scale export, or what has to happen for this to be there in the future?
Definitely, at short term, domestic market for green hydrogen would be limited. And you're right, this region blessed by natural wind and solar will be and definitely a large exporter for such green products, either to Europe or to Asia for sure. Now, as I said, we start from the green part. We are talking about land, large area of land nearby the sea with the optimum irradiation or irradiance or wind resource in order to optimize or to have the best energy mix and to have, as you know, renewable is variable, so to have the highest possible load factor for the electrolyzer and ammonia plant. So we will start only with this. In this region, when I'm talking about Middle East or even North Africa, land is not something obvious to get. Most of them, they are managed, they are owned by the states, they are controlled, and giving access to private sector is not something which is in the law or for which the local authorities are prepared to. So definitely this is the first step that we need to have. And of course, land may not be nearby a seaport, and therefore you need the grid to connect and to transport your green electricity down to the port and down to the ammonia, green hydrogen facilities. So again, we have what we call wheeling, which is the way to land or to land the transport media overhead lines to transport this to your consumption point. This is something which does not exist as such or such easily, and therefore these only two examples or two issues that we need to, and I guess, and I'm sure that in Egypt, in Morocco, in Middle East, local authorities are looking at it in order to open quickly these issues or these possibilities for private sectors to invest and then to develop all these projects.
Thank you, Francois. Mohamed, may I ask you to comment on this large export? What is your view on the Middle East and MENA?
Mr. Francois mentioned definitely, the investment and the export and the offtake, the availability of the offtake, which was discussed in many discussions. It's a matter of chicken or the egg, right? And the EU has a goal to have 12 to 14% of its renewable energy from green hydrogen by 2050. So the market is there, it's picking up. The technology that we need, it is existing today. We don't need to wait for something else to have that export, or let's say the digital tools to prevent the oversupply, to steady the price, to optimize the production based on the demand, that can give some security, let's say, to the producers to start the investment, to make sure the demand is there, it's balanced from the region. The proximity of the region is definitely a plus. It will come, right? It's all what we need is there today, and we're taking the first steps, so.
Thank you. Yep. William, you have a privileged view on Europe, right? You're working there to develop the market. What's your view in terms of potential import from the Middle East? How this will develop? What are the enablers?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'd want to just touch on is, before you look at the import side, the EU will create hydrogen demand through industrial process, through mobility applications, through especially things like aviation, etc. So there will definitely be a degree of demand that's not necessarily super low cost demand, such as domestic heat, which is very challenging to compete with natural gas on price, but say things where we're displacing a fuel that's more expensive and therefore more viable. But equally, within those countries, there will be energy security strategies. There will be strategies around wanting to have a balanced grid. So for example, although I do see there being imports, I think the primary route in the short term will most likely be dynamic production in those geographies. So take a country like the UK. The UK has periods on the wholesale market with negative pricing. You know, we were paid £200 a megawatt hour not too long ago to take electrons and turn them into molecules. Equally, you know, we were also paid £3,000 a megawatt hour to be able to access electricity. So you get a very big swing in the price of power because of the way the market works. That's kind of replicated across much of Europe. Okay, France has got the nuclear, so it has less volatility, etc. But in general, there is a big appetite to reduce the cost of power through having more renewables on the grid, and therefore having access to things like hydrogen as part of that demand and supply balancing risk. So I think I would almost say, yes, the imports will come, but they're not going to come and displace something like gas and go into the equivalent of a CCGT plant that's been hydrogen enabled to just produce baseload power, because that's just not going to be that appealing. I think where it will be appealing is for applications that are of a higher value. So I guess, yeah, the thing to sort of like, from my perspective, is I wouldn't wait for the export opportunity and make all of our strategies contingent on that. I would say, you know, it will be there, but if you keep waiting for it, it might never come, because it'll just mean more nuclear gets built, more other types of power get built in Europe, or, you know, take Korea or Japan examples where they are very keen to import energy. The longer they have to be dependent on fossil fuels, the quicker they will try and find alternatives, and that will hurt the ability to export energy to those economies.
Thank you, William. Dinesh, you have your own market to decarbonize. So you have the opportunity to switch from gray to blue and green hydrogen for your own operation. How do you see this as a competitive advantage to create your own market and then export? How do you see the export then going forward?
So if I read the mind correctly worldwide, the people looking for a carbon neutral energy source. The carbon neutral could be a blue ammonia, could be green ammonia. Now, if anybody had to choose between the two, which one is more cost effective, they will choose. And looking at MENA region, of course, MENA is blessed with both, like hydrocarbons as well as high intensity solar and a lot of winds in the evening, some of the areas like Neom. And that's why exactly saying they are placed in the kind of strategic location which is good for renewables also. Now, the fundamental is like, you know, can we decarbonize MENA itself through renewable by green hydrogen or by solar? And we exporting, for example, LNG, for example. LNG use 10% of its feedstock to make LNG. That 10% burning of fuel can be replaced with the solar, could be wind, could be green hydrogens. That basically also decarbonize the fossil fuel going abroad. So these are basically a kind of strategic advantage in the beginning itself. Rather than sending green hydrogen expensive than blue hydrogen, and people can buy it, I really don't comprehend it at this stage. But of course, looking at the kind of topography we have in MENA, we're definitely going to play key roles as future coming in. Of course, transition is slowly happening from of course, fossil fuels to carbon neutral energy source, for example, blue ammonia. Green is slowly taking pace, and ultimately it will take the advantage as we progress because of changing technology. So the transition is going to be slow. I don't think the next 10 years we, as a MENA, will support exporting green ammonia. Rather than they will look for the market, for example, e-fuel, where of course I'm seeing by 2030 there's a big e-fuel market coming, where the green ammonia can be combined with CO2 from atmosphere. And can have e-fuel for the aviation sectors, like changing aviation. Some other Indian options is, I think at this stage is difficult because of security, because of safety and all this. So of course, the MENA will definitely use green ammonia, but I think you use a localized way. And they try to use green ammonia to decarbonize export hydrocarbons, and as well as maybe support other countries to decarbonize this asset through, I can say, swap options. what I can see at this stage, by 2035, of course, MENA will definitely start exporting green ammonia, big way. It seems to be a bit illogical at this stage, but the thing's moving. I can see some changes happening, and I'm just looking for energy for example, economic breakthrough, or say which basically relate to technology breakthrough. If green ammonia becomes cheaper, why not? Because that's another market, and MENA will capture those markets. So definitely in the future, lastly, I can say here, post 2030, we have a two kind of energy market. One is carbon-based or carbon decarbonized energy market, and second is carbon-free energy market. And I think both start competing on cost level, and that's happening very soon. I can see that. So I can see the big opportunity for MENA to get into that new coming business market, energy market, very soon. That's my understanding is.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you. I agree with you. I agree. The market will come and the export will come soon. Maybe one last question from my side before opening to Q&A from the audience. Is there an opportunity for the MENA region to localize some operation, some manufacturing, for example, electrolyzer, given the big market potentially that will develop here? Francois, would be great to hear from you.
Yeah. Right now, EDF, we have a electrolyzer company in France, of course. And from what I know very personally on this electrolyzer production market, it's mainly small companies, startups, which is normal because we are at the start of the business. So to try to answer your question, yes, there should be possible localization of electrolyzer manufacture. And beside this, and that's what we have been hearing for years now, is localization also on the renewable part. We are talking about wind turbine localization, we are talking about PV modules. So these are parts of the green hydrogen machine, right, of the whole ecosystem. Yes. But it's not really in my business, so we should see it. I'm not sure how it would change or affect the cost. I don't think so. But again, and maybe we have a different view here. I am not sure that cost is an issue. Cost of green hydrogen is an issue at short and medium term. The need is so much, and when we look at we just take into account the target of all the MENA countries of net zero by 2050 or 2060. It's not tomorrow, but it's after tomorrow. So there will be, and there must be, a need of energy transition, and costs will be adapted to this to meet this target. And of course, nowadays, when you have in Europe $250 the megawatt hour of electricity, of course, the 4, 5, or 6 euro the kilogram of hydrogen is peanut. So this is, I'm sure that the market will regulate in order to meet the demand.
William, you are CEO and founder of a startup that is looking into hydrogen. Would you agree with Francois that startup will have to contribute to the development of green hydrogen, and there is an opportunity to attract startup in the Middle East? How do you see this?
Yes, I mean, we've done a very extensive exercise over the last 18 months in terms of trying to procure different sizes and scale of electrolyzer. There's, the core, say, 4 or 5 technologies everyone will be aware of. So you have PEM, AEM, solid oxide, alkaline on a pressurized or non-pressurized basis, and then also, say, membrane-free, cryogenically separated. And I'm sure there's others that I've not mentioned that are maybe less commercially mature at this point. For me, in each one of those categories, there's multiple, whether they be relatively large or very small companies trying to build product in that space. And ultimately, I think they would all be delighted to manufacture where there's a market that would be mature ability to really scale up and do that. And the Middle East has got such a fantastic track record of building very large infrastructure projects. It feels like, for me, a match made in heaven, because you have low cost of power in order to do the production, understand what scale looks like, and also a very credible export story in the future. So for me, I think with the right incentives, I think I can see lots of things that will come. And I'd also say, I guess the beauty of those jobs is, or that type of work is, there's quite high IP in it over time. I mean, one could argue that actually separating water is not that high in IP, but let's say, maybe doing it well is, rather than doing it badly. But it's not just the electrolyzers, because there's compression required, there's storage technologies, there's deionization of water, there's lots of other elements that, in order to see the scale up happen at a material level, I feel like the Middle East is fantastically well positioned to sort of capitalize on that and really sort of be, I'd say, a powerhouse in terms of that ability.
Thank you. Maybe it's time to open the floor for any question from the audience. Anyone who wants to ask anything from one of the panelists?
Hi, thank you. Oda Salem from Fraunhofer ISO, Germany. My question is to Aramco. So today there's maybe 90 million tons of hydrogen already in the economy, plus what would come if you replace the low-hanging fruits, methanol, ammonia, steel, and that would do 10% of the global CO2 emission. Do you see in this decade sort of penetration with green hydrogen in the refinery offtake, which I think in Aramco a big portion of this 90 million ton? Or do you see it coming in the next decades rather?
I couldn't get to your questions because I'm breaking, I'm remote. So you're saying how we intend to use the green hydrogen?
Yeah, you already have a big portion of the existing hydrogen in the economy now. I believe in refineries generally, and I think in Aramco specifically. So is the strategy to produce green hydrogen to replace what's being used in refineries, or to produce it for the new markets growing?
That's exactly we are talking about, localized use of green hydrogen to decarbonize our assets is of prime importance. And because that will save a lot of transport cost and storage cost. And I agree with you, at this stage, we are using a lot of hydrogen for our refineries and petrochemicals through hydrocarbon breakups we call a gasification process. And that's what NEOM may be likely to do, that bring green hydrogen for e-fuel, for example, the new market coming up. That hydrogen can be used into our gas blends, so have a low carbon emission for power generations. That hydrogen can be used as a feedstock to petrochemicals and refineries, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking to enrich our core business through sustainable use of green hydrogen to decarbonize our assets, to reduce our carbon footprints, at the same time to meet the obligations. So I think you hit the nails. That's what I think the big industry is going to do.
Thank you, Dinesh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question to Aramco. Is there any considerations for laying out the hydrogen piping network in Saudi Arabia to feed hydrogen into the refineries or anything around the industry?
I think we already have hydrogen pipeline in Jubail areas, but of course, in the future, as the green hydrogen comes, very viable options, it could be more and more these kind of pipelines. So we have a smaller scale around particular areas in Jubail industrial areas, but of course, in the future, it's going to be more expanded. For example, maybe pipeline running from NEOM all the way to our master gas systems, go to the west coast, go to the east coast. So of course, as we said, at this stage, technology is under breakthrough, and the moment we find the green ammonia, green hydrogen become cheaper, at this stage, of course, we have already made breakthrough in terms of power generation, renewable power generation, because of high capacity factor of solar and winds. So we got that opportunities. Now we are working on the high efficiency of electrolyzer, and that makes breakthrough very soon that we can find that a lot of use of green hydrogen back in the kingdom also. So I agree with you in the future. I'm sure by 2030 we'll have a different discussion on those lines. that a lot of hydrogen lines coming, a lot of hydrogen lines, a lot of CO2 lines will be running around the country. I'm sure, in parallel.
Just a question, if that's okay. So I think if my understanding is correct, Saudi government is giving subsidy to Aramco and refineries for natural gas. Is Aramco pushing for a similar subsidies to use hydrogen, to use it either in refineries or as a feedstock to other chemicals?
I cannot answer those questions about government subsidies, but I can tell you, like, everything makes economics, and the government also is, that world is opening, and subsidy will become a remote object, very soon. So I think we have to work in a global open market, and where economics will play good roles in terms of which make economic sense in terms of investment. Like, as I heard, MENA region going for the green hydrogen, will have export market. At the same time, it has an opportunity to bring a lot of investors from overseas to start, building a unit operation for this electrolyzer, for example, for hydrogen storage, compressors, and all this. So there's a lot of investment expected to come in the MENA region because of if it is take the lead in terms of green hydrogen productions. So I think it's just like a mix of everything, and I don't see subsidy will be a source of expanding green hydrogen footprint. It will be extended by its own based on economics. Is that answer your questions, or if I am too far from?
To me, yes.
Can I just add a comment?
That's fine, thank you.
I think the question is not really on subsidies.
Sorry, is that answer your questions, or like?
Yeah, this Francois. I just want to add a few things to what you have just said. I don't think that subsidies is the right issue. To develop, and we have discussed previously about localization, and to develop industry with more optimum or lower cost, you need a pipeline of project. You need a pipeline of course, of market. We mentioned earlier about export. Domestic market is a key factor, and I'm sure that Aramco is definitely the key player to expand or to boost this local market, local domestic use of green hydrogen. And this is really what I see in terms of pipeline production to reduce the cost and to build these local industries rather than cash subsidies.
Thank you, Francois. I think we lost Dinesh. I think we're running out of time. I would like to thank you very much, our panelists, for this very, very engaged discussion. Maybe a few final comments and remarks. The market is coming. There are many challenges. You, Francois, mentioned the land, the creation of the value chain, the bankability of the project, the importance of the pipeline of projects. You, Mohamed, mentioned the high cost of gas and oil. Is this an opportunity to accelerate, or people will go back to the low world and invest in traditional hydrocarbon instead? Technology is key. So the creation of the right ecosystem, the startup to develop those technologies, and this is an opportunity also for the Middle East to localize part of these manufacturing, because yes, there are traditional players, but which technology will be winning in the green hydrogen space is yet to be demonstrated, and we will see. We mentioned about export. There is a big opportunity for the MENA region to export toward Asia or toward Europe, and this is also a great opportunity to start from a local market. We had the pleasure to have Dinesh from Saudi Aramco. They could actually decarbonize their own operation, and this could be, let me say, the spark, the initial start of the journey for, inshallah, for blue or ultimately green hydrogen. I would like to thank you also, the audience, for the question and for the engagement. And yeah, thank you very much for being here this morning and for the contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you.